We've all been to those meetings before where the meeting goes great, lots of agenda items get handled. There's some big decisions, maybe, or some new news that the team has had to embrace. And in the meeting, everybody's nodding their head and agreeing to what the go forward plans are or what the next steps will be. And then all of a sudden, you leave the meeting and you start to hear office doors close. People start to congregate in little groups. I've been talking about this for about 30 years, and I call this the meeting after the meeting. I remember the first time I experienced this. It was, in fact, long before I opened my business. I was a director of an organization, and we had had a number of changes going on in the organization all at once. So it was feeling really intense for all of us. Not everyone deals with change the same way. I was also new in my role and new in that sector that I was working in. So I was on a massive learning curve. And I remember that we were dealing with some pretty big news and some pretty big changes. And in the meeting, in the team meeting, there was some really rich conversation and some great questions that came forward. And at the end, everyone was kind of nodding their head in agreement about how we move forward. And I was packing everything up to leave the meeting room. And all of a sudden, one by one, click, click, I heard these offices closing. And nobody was out at the coffee machine like the normal habits that I would see, or typical habits that I would see after the meeting, which were people would kind of come out of the meeting, they'd chat as they refilled their cups of coffee. None of that happened. It was sort of like silence and all these private meetings going on. And that's where I learned about the meeting after the meeting. At the next meeting, we talked about that. I was really uncomfortable, by the way, bringing up that conversation. But it was a really important conversation for me to have as a director of the organization, to talk about what happened between the meeting and now. In terms of at the meeting, everybody was agreeing and voicing their agreement, not just nodding their heads. After the meeting, many of the team members got together to criticize the meeting, complain about what was decided, and to really express their displeasure to one another. The conversation, when I said it was a really rich conversation, it was very uncomfortable, a little bit emotional, I would say, for many of us. But what came out of that meeting was some really important indicators for our team. We learned that with me being new, people were still testing the waters with me. In fact, a couple people said, we don't fully trust you yet. And that was really hard to hear. But it reminded me that trust is built in moments. It's not built in one occasion. It's built in moments, all these little actions that start to build trust. And so when we think about the meeting after the meeting, they often happen in workplaces. I see it all the time with my clients. They tell me about the meeting after the meeting that they experience. But what can come out of these is those moments that start to build trust. So by having that conversation that might feel really uncomfortable and tense and a little risky to have, what can happen though on the flip side is that maybe that conversation becomes one of those little moments that helps build trust. Good things can come from the meeting after the meeting when the conversation actually happens to address what happened. I'm Charmaine Hammond. Thank you so much for listening in.